All right, so it has stopped blinking. Maybe I am live now. So if you're just joining me for the first time, I'm Dr. Twanna Carter, and my mic may not have been working, but it stopped blinking, so I think that it works now. And I'm talking about today the secrets to career success, how Black and Latina women can find safe workspaces, right? And so I'm gonna just jet back up to the top because I don't think you guys heard that, right? And so again, we're focusing on empowering Black and Latina women by helping them to find safe, nurturing, and inclusive workspaces. And so I start off with number one. What do we need to look for in identifying safe workspaces? Because it's imperative for that workplace to be safe, both for professional and personal reasons. So I talked about number one, look at the diversity in the roles and the leadership roles. Go out to the org chart or open up that book and go out to the intranet. Are the leadership roles diverse? Do you see yourself represented in the leadership in that C-suite? That tells you a lot. Number two, do they have transparent diversity and inclusion policies? And just as important, number three, do the policies work? Are they actually following them? Like, is it a living document, or did someone write a policy and say, we got a policy, we hit the mark and we're done now? They need to be working that policy, living according to that policy, right? And then number four, do they have mentorship programs that are tailored for underrepresented groups, whichever group that is? That's important because the research says it's important, yes, to have Black and Latina women in the workplace, but if there are no policies and no programs that support them staying and getting promoted, then it's all a waste of time. And that's kind of what you see in the fact that, we're still less than 10% diversity in CC roles at those Fortune 500 companies, right? And so, again, what are the programs that are put in place? Mentorship programs, sponsorship programs, right? And then number five, is there ongoing diversity training and workshop for all employees? Those things are important when you're looking at identifying safe workspaces. If they're missing one, two, three, or all of these, yeah, you're going to need to really go back and think about that particular workplace, right? Because at the bare minimum, they should have these things in that workplace. Number two is about networking and support groups. Networking is such a powerful tool in finding safe workspaces. Because I don't know about you, when people call me up and say, "Hey, how do you like working at this place? We're doing informational interview," and I'm like, "Yeah, you'll want to work this boss, but not that one, or this section, but not that one." So do connect with like-minded women, and you can do that through your professional organizations for your industry, social media groups, LinkedIn, Facebook. They all have groups that you can join. Shoot, there are even groups on Slack that you can join, right? Networking events, both virtual and in person, are important. And don't forget your alumni groups and other affinity groups, your sororities, those type of things. Do network within all those spaces, and not only to get information, but give information. If you know of an employer that you've had to leave and they're half stepping about their policies, or they're discriminating against folks, that's good information to share when you are networking, right? Because again, that networking provide valuable insights, job opportunities, as well as connections to safe and supportive workplaces. Because some workplaces are going to be more supportive than others, and you'll want to look at that. One thing that I like to also tell folks to do is just do a simple Google search on EOC complaints about X company, right? Just EOC complaints on and list that company. If there are EOC complaints that have been filed, you can see them. It's public knowledge. I was quite surprised at some of the big names when I started doing that search, some of the big names that will pop up. Here's the thing, it's, culture can take a long time to shift. It doesn't have to. If C-suite, if the leaders and everyone is really committed to doing it. If you go out and you look and someone has a complaint 10 years ago and they've not had anything recent, I would go a little deeper and check that company out. It may be that they're okay. But if you find a company that had a complaint, say in 2015 and had another one in 2018 and had another one in 2022, that tells you off the bat that there is something going on in that workspace. Because EOC typically, it just don't take frivolous complaints, right? It's really got to be valid before they jump on that bandwagon and go through pursuing that complaint. So it's just real easy, a Google search or a Bing search or Yahoo search, you know, EEOC complaints on in that company. And if you find something, go through and read the complaint. Again, it's public knowledge. Go through and read it. You'd be surprised at what you find, but it does give you a lot more information on whether or not that place could be considered a safe space for you, right? And it's number three. I want to talk about the importance of self advocacy. And I know this is going to be tough for some folks. I have social anxiety. It was way worse in my 20s and up to my 30s. So when we talk about self advocacy, sometimes it's more difficult for some than others. There are some people who don't mind speaking up. They do it all the time because you do have right to a safe and inclusive environment, right? And sometimes though you need to advocate for yourself. And if you're an introvert or if you have social anxiety, it can be challenging to advocate for yourself. That's the importance of number two, being sure you connect to a network who can guide you through that process. But number one, speak up about your experiences. Don't feel like you gotta, whisper in a corner. I don't want everybody else to know. Speak up about those experiences because you do learn to speak up for yourself more. And then the folks that eventually come behind you, you're a voice in the wilderness for them as well. Right. And do seek allies among colleagues and managers. Don't assume because someone looks a certain way that they're not an ally. At least try. I remember a coworker who said, when folks, he was a white guy. He said, when people look at me, they see a good old boy because he wore steel toe boots. He had the plaid shirt, the dirty jeans, the scruffy beard, the curly hair all over the place. And he said, and he talked with the Southern drawl. He said, when people see me and they hear me, they assume things about me. But what people don't know about him until they asked is that he's been an advocate for African Americans since he was about 9 or 10, which is why he no longer speaks with his family because he didn't agree with what they were teaching him. They were teaching him things that were racist. 9 or 10, he didn't agree with it. And he would tell you that. But you had to get to know him rather than making an assumption based on his appearances. So oftentimes you can find allies and colleagues and managers. Ask, don't assume, right? Now, look at it's like by their fruits you shall know them. You know folks by their actions and their deeds. You know who was not an ally, but do ask because don't just depend on appearances because you never know. You do want to document, 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 document. I love to say this over and over again. It is important for you to document, document, document. I can't say that enough. Document the instances of discrimination and harassment. If you don't document what's happening to you, it doesn't exist. Even if someone else is looking over and they're not documenting and you're not documenting, I think that's like 12 times saying document, maybe 13 now. Do document. And it doesn't have to be difficult to do. I always like to do my documentation by the day and the time. On this day, had a conversation with this person at this time. Here's what I said. Here's what they said. Right. And I always had a little notebook that I jotted these things down. And then, of course, when we got to computers and whatnot, I had a password protected document on my computer because, if you're in the workplace, IT has access to your desk and they can read everything you put down. And some companies do. They do that. So mine was always password protected. There so often I would email it to myself so I can have a copy at work. However you choose to document, it is up to you. I think that's 14 times. You can even do it on a smartphone, but you got to make sure those devices are protected because no one else needs to know what you're documenting and why. All right. And then sometimes, managers are smart. Supervisors are smart. You may bring something up to them and you may send them an email and they'll call you up and have a phone call or they'll come to your desk and talk because they don't want to respond in writing. That's fine because after you're done with that conversation, you just create an email and you put on the email memorandum for record. And you put down, at this time, I met with whoever your boss is, whoever you met with. This is what he or she said. Here's what I said. And what I do is I will send a copy to my supervisor. Is this correct? Like, do I have this right? Is this what you said? Am I representing what you said correctly? And here's what I said. They don't have to acknowledge that email. They don't even have to respond. You have it in writing. You're good. That is enough, right? And then number four, I have down here, report concerns to HR or appropriate channels. And I always caveat that report to HR because remember, HR is the company's wingman, not the employees. It just is what it is, right? And so sometimes, if you're documenting, I certainly wouldn't tell HR that you're documenting, doing all that. I just would not until you know which way the winds blow. There are people in HR that can be on your side, but HR as a department is the company's wingman, not yours. Okay, so maybe you can report your complaints to HR. What I always suggest you do is look at the policies. Does your company have an open door policy so that you can go to anybody in that chain of command? Or do they not? Do they say you have to start with your boss and then you have to go to your supervisor and then you have to go to HR? Whatever the company's policies are, follow those. But if you think you have a complaint and you've been doing a documentation, it doesn't hurt if you can find someone, find an attorney who will give you, a consultation, right? And even if you go to EOC, they're going to want to know that you go through the channels and, you know, give people a chance to correct. So it's always important. What is your company's policies about reporting concerns? Follow those so that your complaint is valid all the way through, right? Unless, of course, your complaint is about HR and then you go through the appropriate channels. It just depends on where you are. Okay. And number 4, we're talking about building safe spaces in existing workplaces. I do encourage you, sometimes the best, the safest place in a workplace is the one that you create, right? Create it, build it, create it. Because sometimes you need to do that. It's great walking in the door and hopping on board something someone else has already created, but sometimes you're the person, you're the one that needs to create it. So maybe initiate or join a diversity and inclusion committee or organize educational workshops and trainings, foster open dialogue around diversity and inclusion. Okay. And encourage your employer to adopt and enforce inclusive policies. And 5, don't be afraid to hit the door and leave. If you do all of these and you get nothing but resistance and people saying, no, we won't go, we refuse, we will not, right? In that case, vote with your feet. It is better for you to vote with your feet, find another position that is inclusive, right? Because being in a workspace every day, all day, and you're the only person, woman of color, or you 1 or 2 or 1 or 3, and you feeling the stress of that, it does affect your mental health. It does. And so you have to ask yourself, is that job worth your mental health and therefore your physical health? When we talk about health, there's four components, right? There's mental health, emotional health, physical health, and spiritual health. Racism, right, and unfair work policies creating toxic workplaces affects your mental health, your emotional health, your physical health, and your spiritual health. And sometimes you just need to vote by walking away and getting another job. I'm not saying just quit without another job lined up, but do find a career coach, right, who will help you to line those things up. When you look for your next position, then you come back, all the things that I've listed here today. You come back and go see if they have them. Ask those tough questions. Ask the tough questions in the interview. And if you get the kind of humming and the hawing and the throat clearing and everybody's looking down and they're kind of scratching, or they're just sitting there stone faced like, we're not going to answer any questions. I don't care how much you ask about diversity. You kind of have your answer, right? You already have your answer, right? So yes, together we can all create those safe working spaces, right? So that we can have an inclusive space by building, right, those strong networks and advocating for yourself, fostering positive change, and remembering that your voice does matter. and you deserve to thrive in a professional workplace. You deserve a professional life where you can go every day and it's not harming your mental health. But again, do not hesitate to vote with your feet if you don't have that. Some people are fighters. Early on in my career, I was a fighter. I was going to stand there and fight, fight, fight. As I matured through my career, I was less apt to fight and more about finding a space that has what I need. Finding the space, designing the space to already fit what I needed to have. And so it does vary. It just depends on where you are in your career. And some folks will fight, 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 but you have to take care of your mental health if you're a fighter, right? Or just again, vote with your feet, find something that is inclusive, that includes everybody, right? So if you've held on to with me this long, thank you so much for that. I thank you for joining me live. Those of you who are catching the replay, drop replay, and I appreciate you catching this replay as well. And I'm hoping you can hear me because my microphone stopped flashing, so I think you can hear me now. But join me next week when I have another juicy topic for you. I appreciate you for being here today and take care. Bye bye.